pretty similar to like the age of a dog, but I mean, if you really don't want that chicken, they're not really a nuisance as maybe a dog who cannot eat or drink anymore and is just lying at the door. I mean, they're all pets and everyone loves their pets, but there's no need for that in the city.
Okay. My understanding is that if you need help finding someone locally, Polanski's will recommend someone, and we're looking at about $1.40 per chicken, not per pound, but $1.40 to turn it into chicken soup. Okay. That is the end of my direct questions. With that, I'd like to open it up to the floor of council.
I have a quick question.
Mr. Ventura.
First, to compliment, you guys are both really well spoken. You're impressive. Thanks for coming. It sounds like most of the information you provided us about raising chickens is more applicable to people who have larger properties. Do you raise you both raise chickens? Do you have regular sized lots like we?
No, I live on a big lot. She lives on a big lot too. And we talked about that. We talked about sizing. And again, there's national guidelines, federal guidelines for how much space a chicken needs. Now, this isn't a large production facility like in a factory farming kind of, or what you guys picture as factory farming. And that's 1 square foot per bird. And I don't think that 1 square foot per bird in a recreational backyard coop is appropriate. I think that you guys have been talking about 6 square feet per bird, which is an incredibly reasonable amount of space. When I raised chickens as a child, they were always in an enclosed area. We didn't have free range birds. They were in a pen, and just as a guess, I would say they had about 4 square feet. We kept it very clean, and they were very easy to manage. Now back to the meat birds, we had probably 4 square feet per bird for them too, because we raised them separately, and they were much, much harder to manage. So as far as odors and raising them, you really don't need a lot of space. And federally, talking just 1 square foot, which is incredibly tiny. I think what you guys are talking about is incredibly manageable. I think it is, with proper care, you guys actually are probably on the higher end of the space that I would even recommend for birds.
Well, heck, with 12 with 1 square foot per bird, Mr. Montgomery, you could have 12,000. That's the only questions I have.
Okay, and just follow up to that. You said that 6 is a lot, 1 isn't enough. What do you think is a good number for your graph?
Well, and I go back to what Jess said the other day on Friday when we were speaking to her, because I count her as a poultry expert. She recommends about 4 square feet, but she's more on a production end of it. She's doing this for she sells chickens. She breeds, and we were talking about how she has a online poultry business. So from a production standpoint, something very manageable. She does 4 square feet per bird, which is on the higher end of still, I think, what's necessary. But I think if you're doing this as a recreational thing in the backyard, 6 is fantastic for the birds. But I think that you could easily manage 4 or 5.
And just as the lady that went through your class, she just graduated, and she's now attending college on a full ride because of her FFA work?
Yeah, she's attending Indiana Tech in biochemical engineering. On a full ride through sports and through her work through FFA, and very specifically through all of her poultry involvement. So she's very expert.
That's fantastic. Continue, Mr. Ventura.
Sorry, Joe.
Okay.
Really quickly, so as opposed to someone who might have chickens as pets or for therapeutic purposes, someone who's doing FAA or what have you for the fair, kids or whatever, how many chickens do they generally have? Is that like 1, or are we talking?
That ranges so often. Usually people who are just starting off will get the 1 or 2 just for the brother and the sister, but as they grow through the project, they'll want to get more because they enjoy being with their birds. And then there's the more competitive side where the people will have, like Jess has many birds, so that she can find that perfect bird to show at the fair that's up to perfection, even if it does take having many birds. Myself, I've had up to 10 birds at a time, but right now I have 3 because of the winter and, as I said, my possum problem. And I would love to get more, but as I'm going to college, I probably won't. It all ranges, and everyone at the fair is on their own, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, their own, I don't know. Some people live on big farms, some people live in like the Keystone area where it might be even smaller, or even go to Amherst, but they have to have their chickens somewhere else. So they live on smaller farms, or someone lives on a big industrial farm that we would all know and see on the road.
How many is the max birds that like one child could take to fair?
It is 5.
So
Average child takes maybe 1,
Average child can, I would say 2.
2. Okay, I just want to make sure we understand all of our options here as we write this legislation. If there are those of us who think that this is one good aspect of this to allow FFA and 4-H participants to do it, that 2 birds for most cases would be enough of a provision. Okay, that's all.
Right, and that fits right into the intent here. We have a piece of ordinance that's been written but needs to be amended, and we'll continue to do that. With that, Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome. Good to see you outside of the normal workday. The one question that I've noticed, and I've got binders and emails and everything coming at us on this subject, is at the fair, is the chicken barn the loudest barn because of
I mean, all the barns are loud during the day when people are there. I mean, the animals are seeing people, they want to be seen. Obviously, the chickens are all, in the chicken barns, we have all kind of fowl that you can think of, from ducks to turkeys to geese to pigeons, you name it, it's in the barn. So
how about the chickens? And I'll make it easy on you. How noisy, how loud compared to your dogs or your other domestic animals?
Well, during the day, I mean, at night they're sleeping, so that's not really the problem at night, and just more like dusk and dawn. The actual roosters are the ones that are making the noise, and when one rooster goes off, it'll make all the other roosters go off. So yes, it can be very noisy, but that's just the roosters. The hens themselves will do a little low clucking, maybe if they're laying an egg or they're just chilling. But usually it's the roosters and the cockerels, which is like a younger rooster, that are making the noise. It's not usually the hens or anything else. That would be the only problem with the roosters.
Anything else, Mr. Miller?
That'd be it.
Okay. Ms. Wasil?
Could you talk about the costs involved in raising the average chicken and what's involved, what you have to buy, how much it costs
Well,
for the 2 or 3 years it lives?
Okay, for you guys, you would probably want to buy the coop and then a run for it, because you would definitely want them enclosed in such close spaces, and you wouldn't want them roaming free. Coops you can either build yourself or buy either online kits, and you can like build from there, or just buy them as one big piece. That ranges greatly depending on how, because they can be as deluxe as your dog's beautiful penthouse. I mean, you can make it as simple as you want.
What kind of range?
hundreds to thousands. There's a young lady down the road from us, down the road from the high school rather, who sells coops, and I think her prices start around $1,000 for a complete kit or completely built with the outdoor run, up to the thousands. And I mean, they've got little flower boxes on them, and they're beautiful. But so I would say hundreds if you were building it on your own, and thousands if you were buying the kits, or thousands. As far as raising the actual birds, again, with proper management, they really don't eat, the laying birds don't eat a whole lot. So a 50-gallon bag of, or a 50-pound bag of feed, probably with 4 birds would last you over a month.
Yeah, with my 3
How much
birds.
does a bag of feed cost?
That, at TSC, I will usually get a 50-pound bag of chicken feed, or just all fowl feed, for anywhere from $15 to $20, depending on, you know, how much they have or what part of the year it is. And that lasts me, we just got a new one, and we've had the 50-pound bag since September, and we just bought a new one last month. So.
But you say typically though, if you have 4 birds, it would be about $15 to $20 a month for feed. Does that sound
Probably
like a good
high
number?
end, yeah.
Are there any other expenses that are involved, medications or anything like that?
Yeah, they would need a dewormer, probably twice a year, and it's, you know, it's very, very inexpensive. I think if you bought the smallest container that TSC had, it would last years for the amount of birds that you guys are talking about, and it's very, very inexpensive, just a few bucks. And of course, bedding would be an expense, and it depends on what you use, whether you buy straw or whether you buy wood shavings, and both of those, unfortunately, at the moment are kind of pricey.
What would be an average cost for 4 birds to have bedding for a month, or whatever you know?
I would say for bales of straw, probably, and depends on size. I would say that for $50 either way, you could bed the birds for a month.
$50 a month for bedding?
Yeah, yeah, unless you're buying in bulk or have connections to somebody locally. If you went to TSC and bought the stuff, I think that's probably what you could.
And that's for shavings too, or are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's pretty pricey there, but I think that would cover it. You know, if you dust for mites and things, and really since these birds aren't going to be in contact with other birds, most likely, well, they'll be in contact with wild birds. But if you even had to dust for mites or something, that's, again, very inexpensive. And on the topic of mites, mites that they would have are not, they're not contractable by humans. But they are bird to bird.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that typically to actually build the cage would be hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars, depending on whether you actually build it your own or whether you buy a fancy kit. And for the maintenance of the birds, for 4 birds, it would be for feed and we'll throw the medications in with that, $15 to $20 a month. Do you think that's reasonable? Reasonable guess? And then about $50 a month for bedding. Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodell?
I had a question regarding the straw and the wood shavings that you recommended. How often do you change that?
You know, again, it's going to depend on the size, and depend on the birds, depend on the weather, if you're bedding outside. You know, I have a student who lives, Hogan and Rose, who lives in Lorraine, and she has a beautiful coop in her backyard because they allow for those provisions. But she had it poured with concrete, so the outdoor area that the birds are in is completely concreted. And really, for her, she simply scrapes it off and throws it in their BFI bin. The interior where the birds are in their indoor coop is bedded with straw, and just as a guess, I would say she probably cleans it, completely pitches it clean once every couple of weeks, and probably picks it clean once a week. And that's just a guess. I'm not exactly sure how often she cleans it, but it is, every time I've seen it, it's beautiful and well cared for, and I think pretty easy to maintain for her.
Okay, well, being at the questions regarding the animal waste, is this something that obviously you just throw it in the trash?
I think that's probably how you guys would handle it. I mean, a lot of my students would compost it or spread it if they had agricultural fields. I guess it's not something that you guys will be able to do. I don't think the amount of waste will be so much that it's something that's impossible to put into a dumpster, your roadside dumpsters, but I think that's probably how you guys would have to handle it.
That's all I have, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else from council? Mr. Bukovac?
Thank you. I also like to thank you guys for coming. I think it's very informative. My children go to the Firelands school system, and I can tell you that the participation in FFA out there is something probably that a lot of Amherst students are missing out on and don't participate, because it is very, the students, my kids, are city folk, but I see that their friends that are involved in FFA are a little bit more rounded than the other kids, and I think that's great. And the question I had for you is, you mentioned domestic animals, and I didn't really consider our discussion to be domestic animals. Do you classify what we're talking about here as domestic?
I think that's a really fine line, and it depends on who you're talking to. You know, I think that's an argument that's going on across the state, whether these are livestock, whether they're pet animals, and I think chickens are the dividing line. I mean, I think we could all decide pretty easily that a pig or a steer is a livestock animal, and I think these are the ones that are towing the line. And I think, again, in talking to the professor that I spoke to today, he was kind of helping me to define that, and he said that really, there is no clear definition in our state. Every little community is doing what you guys are doing that are having this problem, sitting down and making your own definitions. You know, I think having 4 in the backyard is much like having pets, your dog or cats or something else for recreation. I think that if you went to large scale, then you had 10, 15 in the backyard, it becomes a production thing. And as far as the term domestic just refers to animals that are domestic to the United States, not exotics, which is
No, pretty wide range. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Thank you,
Jen?
ladies, for coming. Is there a minimum amount of chickens you need to lay eggs?
no. Oh, that's a good topic. Chickens don't require males to lay eggs. The hens need nothing but sunlight, really, that's what drives them to lay eggs. And we talked about that a little bit on Friday too, so no, one would lay an egg. But again, I think if you had multiple, they're going to be more productive and more on a schedule. We also talked about on Friday when he asked if you need electricity. If you're not going to force them to lay eggs, this time of year chickens wouldn't be laying eggs but every few days because they're light driven. So if you have artificial light on them, you can get them to lay an egg every single day of the year. But no, the answer is one would lay an egg. They do not need a male to lay eggs. Matter of fact, or unfertilized eggs, the ones like you get in the grocery store, they have never had a male in contact with them. So that is not what stimulates egg production. It's light.
Thank you.
So you don't need a rooster?
No.
Okay, good to know. Awesome. Mr. Mulcumber, did you have any questions for?
Do I have a question?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't.
Over
I
here.
had that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're the one person I'm
I
going to talk
do
to.
have a question about sustainability, because I wonder about that with having chickens in a residential neighborhood. If you take an egg-laying variety, a hen, and that hen lays eggs for a period of time, if you didn't euthanize or slaughter that hen when it was done laying eggs, how long would it live? So what's really the ratio between how long, if somebody buys it for laying eggs, right? How long are they gonna get production, and how long would the chicken otherwise live if you didn't kill it?
Good question.
Because that's a question of sustainability.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. In my experience, now I don't have anything to cite here, but in my experience, our chickens would live 5, 6, 7 years or so, and they would lay productively. Probably, if a chicken lives 7 years, I would say that they productively lay for 5 years. In those last couple of years of their life, they would still lay eggs. Maybe perhaps not as efficiently as they did in the first 5 years. It kind of wanes off. I've never, in my experience, and maybe I'm the anomaly, I'm not really sure what the answer is here, but I've never had a chicken that stopped laying eggs and hung out and just lived for a couple of years beyond that. When I was a kid growing up, our chickens stayed productive through basically the end of their lives, but perhaps not as efficiently productive or as productive as they were younger in their lives.
So you're saying they lay eggs their entire life then?
In my experience, yes, to some extent. So it does wane as they get older.
But if you buy these chickens because you want to produce eggs, because you want to eat eggs, right? You have these, and you have a limit of 4 or 5 chickens. Once you get those chickens and they get older, aren't you going to get to a point where I'm not getting my egg production anymore? And I guess I'm going to kill them and move on and get
Perhaps.
more ones.
Yeah, I guess if you're lucky enough that they all lived at the same age, but the reality is they're not as hardy as a dog or a cat. So the likelihood if you bought 4 now, them all being here 6 years from now,